I want to move to the next piece, which is going to shed light on the first century events. If you understand this, you understand a lot of the stories that we read in the gospel. When this happened, you have a family of Mattathias family. And the firstborn of Mattathias is Judas Maccabees. That's why they call this movement the Maccabean revolt. Mattathias and his son led a revolt along the lines of guerrilla warfare. They didn't really, structure the army to fight against the Greeks and Antiochus. They started doing a counter-terrorism, if you can call it that way. They forced Jewish boys to circumcise and threatened the lives of complacent Jews. They say, if you don't circumcise your children, we'll kill you. Are you afraid of Antiochus? You should be more afraid of us. So the Jews didn't know where to get it from. The initial attempts to quell them by Antiochus IV, the Antiochus Epiphanes, failed. The Maccabees were encouraged by these failed attempts and increased their numbers and efforts. They went even worse. The Seleucids were further weakened after the death of Antiochus in 164. Then his successor, his name is Lysias. In an attempt, he found himself in a very difficult place where guerrilla warfare is against him, and he doesn't know where he's going to get it from. So he wanted to pacify the Jews. So he made peace with them and allowed them to regain their religious practices. This is for a little bit. This allowed the Maccabees to take hold of the temple, clean all the stuff that Antiochus had done in it, and they purified it. They took a lot of time to purify it. At one point, this is something I need to say, I didn't write it in the notes. They had to bring olive oil for the menorah in the temple. This is one of the things that they needed to start. The Jerusalem area had no olive oil. It was a wartime, very difficult time. So they send a messenger who would have to go for 8 days to bring, 4 days going, 4 days coming, to bring the olive oil. And in the store, in the temple, they had only 1 day supply of the menorah. Miraculously, they say, in the Maccabees, that oil lasted for 8 days until the messenger came with the oil. That's why this feast is called Hanukkah, and they celebrate it with a menorah of 8 branches. That's what we call in the Gospel of St. John. You read about it in chapter 10. When Jesus was walking, it was a winter time, and he was walking in the in Solomon Porch, and it was the feast of the rededication, the dedication of the temple. This is what the feast is about. This is a feast that comes from Maccabees. The feast of the renovation of the temple. They're dedicated to worship according to the Torah, but it's too late. The Maccabees that started as a religious revolt against the desecration of the temple, it became a political movement looking for political independence. They started as people who were zealots, very zealous for the Jewish tradition and law. Now they moved into becoming people looked to them. They said they will be the ones to free us from the rule of the Greeks and whoever comes after that. And this begins what we know as the Hasmonean dynasty, Al-Hashemiyin. That's the name, Hasmonean. Mattathias' descendants, that's how it is established. The Jews saw themselves as an independent again for the first time since 587, when the exile happened. But were they truly independent? Not really. So we're going to have a little bit of timeline. We're starting at 140 BC to 110 BC. They ruled semi-autonomously from the disintegrating Seleucids. The Seleucid empire started to go down, getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So they are actually now, the Hasmoneans started to rise as the family. We're going to look into their family tree. From 110 to 63 BC, they are fully independent. This is when they are actually become very independent. How many years? 57 years, right? 57 years. Fully independent, invading surrounding territories, including Samaria, Galilee, Etruria, Perea, and Edomia. restoring Judea to Solomonic size at the time of King Solomon. This is what the Hasmoneans have done, gaining a lot of power and momentum. 63 to 37, the Roman comes. They were not left alone for long. And we're going to know about the Romans. How did the Roman come? Simple. At that time, the last of the, now we're going to go talk about the Ptolemies. I'm going to talk about them in a second. Cleopatra was making relationship with the Roman Empire through Julius Caesar. And she had a child from him. She called him Caesarion. But then Julius gets assassinated. And who takes over? His generals are fighting now. There is a civil war, especially Octavius. And who's the second one in his big generals? Julius generals. Octavius and Mark Antony. So after the death of Julius, Cleopatra decided to befriend Mark Antony. And actually they had an affair. And Mark Antony used Egypt under Cleopatra to fight Octavius. Who won? Octavius. In a sea battle near Greece. It's called Actium. And he defeated the Egyptian fleet miserably. They burned all the ships. When Cleopatra and Mark Antony hear of it, Antony commits suicide. He knew that Octavius is not going to let him live. And Cleopatra, hearing of his suicide, she also goes, and the history says that she commits suicide by taking poison. Some tales said that she had used a venomous serpent, but that's not the case. She killed herself with a poison, and she dies. And by her death ends the last of the Ptolemies. Cleopatra was the last of the Ptolemies. And Octavius makes himself Augustus. That's the new title. And he takes over all the region. And he goes into Jerusalem, fights the Jews, massacred them. Actually, he's in Bombay, and Bombay killed almost many hundreds of thousands of the Jews, and takes over Judea, Samaria, Galilee, the whole area, and turned this place into a Roman occupation place. Then comes Herod. Let's talk about that Hasmoneans for a second. So Hasmonean, this is a picture, so a little bit faint. Mattathias is the father, and he's 166 BC. And his children, the most important that one had the name, is the one that was most active is Judas Maccabees. This one, Judas Maccabees. But the one that's going to continue the line is Simon Maccabees, or Maccabeus. Simon had 3 children. The most important of them is John Hyrcanus. That one. Oh, here. John Hyrcanus, this one. John Hyrcanus begets Alexander Jannaeus. Just remember that line. It goes like that. And then from there, you have Aristobulus II. Aristobulus II begets Alexander. And Alexander has a daughter. Her name is Mariamne the First. Listen to this. Who married King Herod the Great, who massacred the children in Bethlehem in the time of the birth of Christ. So one thing you notice here, this is a family most probably from the priest side. It's a priestly family. Herod is not that part of this family. He marries himself into this family by marrying the daughter of the line of the Maccabees. And he makes himself the king of Judea. He was a terrible person, very murderous. He killed his wife. I think he killed Mariamne herself, and I think also a child or 2 of his. Whenever he feels that somebody is threatening him, he goes and kills them. So this is the Hasmoneans, and this is the rule of the Hasmoneans as you reach closer to the Romans. As you reach closer to the Romans. His father was also a close friend of the Romans when they came, the father of Herod. We talked about the Ptolemies in Egypt. The list of kings ended with Cleopatra, who looked to Rome to regain some power over Egypt, but got entangled in the Roman Civil War. She had an affair with Julius Caesar. She allied with Mark Antony after the assassination of Julius. Octavian defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra in the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Octavius took over Egypt and the whole area. The era of the Roman Empire began. Octavius changed his title to Augustus Caesar. During his time, Christ the Lord was born, especially during the time of the census that he made. And so this is a little bit history about what happened between. It's a messy piece. It's a very big, messy piece. Now, when you move to the leadership in Judea in the post-exilic era, I want to talk about the leaders now. After the exile, the last king of Judah, Jehoiachin, son of Jehoiakim, and grandson of Josiah, was taken to Babylon. That's the last king that we can tell as a legitimate heir to the throne of David. Never returned to Jerusalem. The grandson of Jehoiakim, Zerubbabel, was appointed a governor over Judea. You read this relationship between the two in Matthew, first chapter, the genealogy of Jesus. In the first wave of the return to begin the building of the temple, Zerubbabel built the temple. That's the temple. The temple is named after him. They call it the second temple. About Herod, it's the third temple. First temple is Solomon. Second temple is Zerubbabel. The third temple is Herod. Zerubbabel was never enthroned, and after a short stay, he was returned to Babylon, never to return to Judea. Nobody heard of him again. The leadership was taken by the high priest Joshua, who came with him. The line of high priests took over the role of the kings in the post-exilic time. During the fight against the Hellenization, the Maccabees became the leaders of the nation. Their movement became the roots of the sect of the Pharisees. They especially enforced the keeping of the Sabbath and the purity laws. On the other side, the senior priest and the families of the high priest, so Maccabees were not part of this group of the priests at the time. The high priest and the priest were influenced by the political pressure since the Greek rule. We said that they could appoint one high priest, they can retire the priest, they can actually lay off the priest. He becomes like an employee of the Greek ruler. So that's how the high priest and the priest became the Sadducees. Why? Because their fate was in the hands of the governor. So they slowly developed a lax. So you have the zealots, zealous Pharisees, which were the Maccabees, and you have the priests and the high priests who were very much politically involved, that they let go of their beliefs, and they kept only the ones that would help them in their jobs in the temple. They were not interested in studying the Torah, not interested in keeping the law of God. They were interested to keep their place, their job. Now I want to move to the Sanhedrin, which was the legislative and judiciary governing body in Israel, was formed in the latter part of the post-exilic era. We don't know exactly when the Sanhedrin started to exist, but we know that it was made of three elements. The Pharisees. Who are the Pharisees? The descendants of the Maccabees. And the high priest, the senior priest, which is the sect of the Sadducees, they are the descendants of the high priest and the priest in the time of the Greeks. And then the third group, which is the noblemen, rich family heads. Out of the three, so you have three groups in the Sanhedrin: the Pharisees, the descendants of the Maccabees, the zealots that were actually pushing people and even threatening them and killing them to keep the law of Moses, and the Sadducees, which were the high priest and the priest of the time of the Greeks. And then the third group, which is the rich people, the noble people of the country. Out of the three, the high priest was the most powerful. The Pharisees represented the most educated group of the three. So when the priests have a question related to religion, who do they go to? To the Pharisees. It's a shame. Like the priest and the high priest, they have a question regarding the law. They go to the Pharisees, but they contradict the Pharisees on things like the spirits. Man has no spirit. When they die, they die. There is no afterlife. There is no resurrection. That's what the Sadducees would say. The Pharisees can speak until they turn blue talking about it, and the Sadducees would say, forget it. In trials of the Lord before the Sanhedrin, we have the three persons. Caiaphas and Annas they were two high priests actually, a man and his son-in-law. And if you wonder why, because in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, he started doing what? Appointing and excusing high priests as much as he wants. So there might be 3, 4, 5, and it usually happened by bribing the governor. The one who gives him more money will stay in. That's why they say Annas was the richest person, the richest high priest in all history, because he stayed and he appointed his sons one after another, and he appointed his son-in-law by his money, by giving money to the Roman governor and to Herod. So Caiaphas represented the high priest, the Sadducees. Nicodemus represented a person from the Pharisees. He was a Pharisee. And Joseph of Arimathea represented the noblemen, the rich people. That's the 3 persons that you see in the gospel. Each one of them represents one of the 6 of the 3 6 of the Sanhedrin. And that's it for today. We're coming to the end of our study of the Old Testament. Next time will be the last one. Next time we'll look into the poetry and the wisdom books quickly, just that because I want you to know a little bit about the Psalms and the book of Psalms and the book of Proverbs. But this is as much history as I would ask you to keep. There's too much details in these areas and too much stuff about the time of the Greeks and how did Antiochus dealt with the people and what happened. But I would recommend that you read Maccabees, at least the 1st and 2nd Maccabees, and have all the history that you can think about regarding this time. I am ready to take questions if you are interested in asking a question. Quickly, we have 4 questions that we asked today. The first question is, what happened after the exile? Talked about what happened to the people. How did Jerusalem fare under the 4 empires? Who was the Maccabees and the Hasmoneans? And who were the leaders of Israel during the post-exilic period? And I wanted to make sure that you understood that the leadership was moved from the king to the high priest. And then the high priest fell under the rule of the Greek rulers, and they started messing them up. And then you end up with the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin is made up of those 3 groups. And that's it. Next time we'll get the last session in our Old Testament. If you started to feel giving up, don't, please, we're done. Yes. 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 Was empty. So the question is, where was the Ark of the Covenant during the time after the return from the exile? Nobody knows. There is something from Jeremiah that's very clear. I want to show you that Jeremiah had said this is amazing, actually. Jeremiah 3. I remember if I'm correct. Jeremiah 3 speaks about the Ark of the Covenant. Here. I'm reading it from the Septuagint. Jeremiah 3. Here we go. Hmm? 16, verse 16. Okay. So it says, it shall come to pass that if you multiply and increase in the land in those days, says the Lord, they will no longer say the Ark of the Covenant of the Holy One of Israel. It will not enter their heart, nor be named or visited. Neither will this be done anymore. So they say they will not do it. They will not make the Ark of the Covenant. It will be lost. So Jeremiah had an understanding that this will not be. It will not happen. Yeah, you did. There were sacrifices in the time of Jesus too. They had the sacrifices going on. They most probably made new ones because everything was taken. They peeled the bronze and the silver and they burned everything else they could burn. So they had to remake everything new to continue the sacrificial system. And it's very interesting to understand how the Jews are surviving today without the sanctuary, without the temple. I ask this question. I say, in their mind, since they were a nation, since they actually came out of Egypt, there was a tabernacle. There was sacrifice in the place that God decided. And he told them, don't do it everywhere. You have to do it in the place I tell you. You cannot be just doing it in the States or in Europe. It has to be in Jerusalem. So how come today they don't have it? How they are surviving? What makes them clean? Because without sacrifices, they cannot expiate their sins. So where they're going with it? That's one of the questions I ask. How can you be a Jew and not have a sacrifice for 2,000 years now? I know the answer. They don't know the answer. That's the question. Actually, some traditions from their old tradition says the whole world exists because there is a temple in Jerusalem with sacrifices going on. So what happened since the year 70 AD? How come the world is still existing? In their mind. They actually go all the way to say, and in the Revelation would say this, that there is a shaft to hell. There is the well to hell. And that well that leads to hell is in Mount Moriah, on Mount Zion. And that's why God asked Abraham to take his son and sacrifice him over there, to keep that well closed. Only thing that keeps hell from exploding on the world is that there is a sacrifice going on always on that place. That plugged it, that kind of sealed it. Okay, it's not there anymore. Why is not hell loose? That's the question I ask. Because that's in the book of Revelation. He said he saw an angel coming down from heaven, and in his hand he has the key to the well. You see, where is it? I saw a great angel coming down from heaven, and in his hand was a key to the shaft. Can we get this out? So speak about this, and I think it is. It might be early. Huh? 20? Thank you. 20. Oh, here's this. So you say, and saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. So this is the one that's going to take the devil and throw it into it. And that's, what do you say here? The great nether regions where the disobedient are confined, awaiting final judgment. The demons fear it. It is reached through a chasm, the key to which is in the hand of the angel. The great chain binds Satan. So that's something they believe, and we too believe it, that there is actually Hades, and the Hades is the place where the condemned are locked, the bottomless pit. Okay, any other questions that we need to answer? I have something in the chat. Okay. If Korah was a Levite, why did he rebel against Moses and Aaron? Why was he jealous? Me? Huh? I see. Okay. So Korah was a Levite as a deacon. So he wanted to work as a priest. Not all the Levites were priests. So you have to understand the Levite tribe, it's the big tribe, was responsible for serving the tabernacle. But a group of them, which is the family, just the family of Aaron, that's it, was supposed to be the priest. The rest of the tribe was servants, deacons. So they wanted to serve as priests in the tabernacle and offer incense and slaughter animals and sacrifice and all that stuff. But they were not given that job. And they said, it is democracy. Why are you so special? We are the tribe. We're all consecrated. But they got punished for it. Was jealous because they couldn't do what the priests. The priests had a more a special place for service. Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions? Let's pray. So next time we'll do the last session of Old Testament and we'll be done. And I will keep the review after Holy Week. We'll do a session or two on review and then we'll do the test. Make us worthy, O Lord, say thank you, our Father who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, thine is the kingdom, power, and glory now. May the love of God the Father and grace of His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you, in peace.